Our next speaker is someone we all, I should say the company, something we all use, is Turkey Hill. From ice cream to iced tea. And please welcome Executive Vice President of Turkey Hill, John Cox.
Well, thank you very much, Barry. I appreciate it. It's certainly good to be here as well. I was expressing to Jeff Kapenitz earlier my motivation for coming. Along our way in our lean journey, I've been privileged to go to a variety of different places, benchmark a variety of different organizations, listen to people tell their lean journey, and it gradually over a number of years has made a huge difference in the way I perceive what we do. And so when I get an opportunity to share mine, as humble as it is, I think hopefully it'll add some value to your life as well. Turkey Hill Dairy is a 78-year-old company, I think, now at this point. And a lot of people ask us, where did you get that name? So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to our company. This name, Turkey Hill, comes from a sheepskin deed dated 1768 from William Penn's sons to ancestors of the people who owned this company and built it. And it's a sheepskin deed that we still have in our possession, and it describes all that country commonly known as Turkey Hill. Also happened to be Penn's Manor, which if you ever hear Penn Manor School District, which you don't very often, but if you ever hear Penn Manor School District, that was Penn's Manor out in Lancaster County. So the founder of the company in 1931, in the middle of the recession, was trying to feed a family of kids, put some milk in the back seat of his car, went down the road peddling milk door to door. That's how the company got started. Those kids grew up in 1947. They bought the company from their dad. He went back to farming. They stayed in the manufacturing business and created and built the corporation. 1967, they started building convenience stores because they realized that the home delivery milk business might be on its way out. By 1980, they began to realize that supermarkets were a big opportunity for them, so they built an ice cream manufacturing plant. In 1980, when we built the ice cream manufacturing plant, we made about 500,000 gallons of ice cream a year. This year, we'll make about 25 million. So that's, to give you a sense of size and scope, since 1980 to today, I think I've got this right, that's about a 50-fold growth in those 30 years. 1990, we built a fluid production plant, and at that time, I didn't get the numbers down here, but we were a little milk company and we were a little fluid beverage company, sold a little bit of stuff in Lancaster County and south central Pennsylvania. Today, we sell iced tea in 46 states across the United States and about 150 million quarts of fluid beverage a year. We're the #1 refrigerated iced tea in the United States. We're the #5 brand of ice cream in the United States, but we only sell in 20 states, to give you a sense of the market share that we have in those 20 states. The year 2000, we built new warehouses, and then just for a point of interest this coming year, because I want to advertise this, hopefully in April or in the spring of this year, we're going to open what we call the Turkey Hill Experience in Columbia, Pennsylvania. It'll be a visitor center entertainment venue where you can come and learn about ice cream if you want, or you can just have fun interacting with ice cream if you want. And that'll be in, hopefully this spring you'll get an opportunity. So it's an old company and it's a dairy industry, and yet it's a company that has changed and grown. I remember Charles Fry, when he retired, saying to me, the one thing that I did was I realized that people were very valuable, but things could be done away with. And I think that really stuck with us down through the years. Well, today we employ about 700 people. We have a 300,000 square foot plant. It's ice cream, fluid beverages, warehouse. We manufacture only Turkey Hill brands. It's a modern plant, integrated computer controls and so forth. It's a very modern, nice plant, and we've been very fortunate, I think, to have that. And so, unlike people that you run into who get into lean oftentimes, and we just sort of heard a story similar to this, they get into it because they've got something really pressing them. There's something that's gone wrong and they see an opportunity and they want to do it. We were not really in that kind of a position. We were winning in many ways. We were growing in I think I have this right, about 25 years we grew double-digit growth every year uninterrupted. So our relationship with our employees, our relationship with our customers, our relationship in the marketplace was very, very successful. But I was uneasy. I was getting uncomfortable with with things that I perceived, and I won't go through all of them for you, but I could see that the industry consolidation in the ice cream business meant that the people who were surviving were stronger and much more savvy, and the competition was getting more fierce. I could begin to perceive that our productivity growth was flattening out as an organization. We had a tendency to solve problems with capital. So when things weren't going quite right, we'd say, well, I need some equipment, or I need this, or I need that. And then a lot of times I noticed when we did our capital solutions, we would get 80 or 90% out of what our investment should get to us. We didn't get everything we thought that it would get for us. And another thing that I saw that made me uneasy was I began to realize that the level of expertise was shifting in terms of our expectations of employees at all levels in the organization, but including leadership. And oftentimes when opportunities came for promotion, people weren't actually prepared to go to that next step. It wasn't that they weren't capable, or it wasn't that they weren't talented, but they weren't capable. And so I began to mull these things in my head, and I had this sort of uneasiness about where we were. And another thing that I noticed was that we had many great ideas and opportunities, more than we could actually do. So we were growing very rapidly, we were paddling as hard as we possibly could, but the truth of the matter is the number of things that we could do far exceeded what we were capable of doing. And I could look around and realize that it was in large part because everything in the organization was that traditional hierarchical model, where everything had to come up to some really smart person at the top, and they had to nod their head and say, yes, okay, and then everything went back down, and people tried to do what that smart person told them to do. And we had, frankly, our executive team is very talented. I'm unashamedly, not just myself. I mean, the people in that room were really good people, and we were doing a good job, but we were really sort of limited by that structure that we had. And so the bottom line is, I think if you were really honest, and it took a little bit of work for me to do this, but we had grown our entrepreneurial model and maybe the leadership model that we had developed in the 60s to the 80s to about as far as it could go. Or I sometimes described it as like you were redlining the capacity of the leadership team to do anything. We're working 24/7. Our plant runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't have a cleanup shift. We clean on the fly all the time. We had mastered a lot of things, but you can't have a management person or a leadership person in every room saying, here, now do this, now do that, now here's how you fix that, now here's how you fix that. So I looked at all of these different things, and I began to say, we're ready for a transition to another level as an organization, and I don't know what it is exactly, but I know that we need to do it. And I was becoming convinced that we needed to navigate away from sort of that traditional model. So as I really looked at that and thought about that and talked with other people on the executive team, we began to try to postulate what associate engagement might look like. And I sometimes laugh and say people in Lancaster County like to invent their own wheels. We'll have a 12-sided wheel, and somebody will say, hey, there's a round wheel. And I go, I know, but we got a 12-sided wheel, and that's pretty good. So, you learn about my 12-sided wheel, and once you understand it, I'll listen to you about your round wheel. But, yeah, but there's a round wheel. Anyway, so, I really began to get to the place where I said, hey, I really need to try to open us up as an organization to new ideas. And one day the quality assurance manager mentioned to me that she had been at a lean, at a conference somewhere, and she'd run into this lean presentation and thought maybe I would benefit from getting exposed to that. And I think what I said to her more or less was, hey, we don't do trends and fads and thing of the year. We do our own thing, and thanks very much, but go do your job. And a couple days later, that bugged me, And I thought about it. I said, that was a bad response. I need to apologize for her. And I went back to her and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I should have listened to you. Tell me about it. And she told me about it. And I listened to her excitement. I listened to her enthusiasm. I listened to the idea. And I went, you know what? Maybe there's something there. Did a little reading. And I began to see the potential. And I just want to share something with you from our journey that it relates to the forward in the Toyota way. If you read the book, you probably read all the principles and all the things you can do. But Gary Convis says this at the very beginning in the forward. The Toyota way can be briefly summarized through the two pillars that support it: continuous improvement and respect for people. And he talks about what continuous improvement is, and he says, but more important than the actual improvements that individuals contribute, the true value of continuous improvement is in creating an atmosphere of continuous learning and an environment that not only accepts but actually embraces change. And I just was like, whoa, man, this guy's talking my language. This is right up our alley. He said, I believe management has no more critical role than to motivate and engage large numbers of people to work together toward a common goal. Defining and explaining what the goal is, sharing a path to achieving it, motivating people to take the journey with you, underline with, and assisting them by removing obstacles, those are management's reasons for being. And I was hooked. So that was the beginning of our journey. That was in 2005. And it came from me being willing to humble myself and listen to one of my staff people tell me I didn't know everything in the world, and accepting that as a concept. It was a little tough. So we began to formulate how we would explore and experiment and catch up here with what I'm talking about. And we did a variety of things. I took a group of people to DuPont. I remember sitting at DuPont and listening to the guy talk about lean, and he said, you know, you have 15% there's 15% of your costs that you could remove from your operation. And in the quiet that followed, I sat there, I did a little mental math, and I went, wow, nah. Well, that's good news, because we're pretty good then. That means we can probably save something by following this, but we don't have that much cost we can drive out. And then he started again. He said, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, man, we're not that bad. And I can tell you, I went home that day, and the people who were in the car with me, and we argued about that, and we convinced ourselves that, in fact, he was wrong about us. And 5 years later, I can tell you, he had us dead right. And I could not accept it on that day. But today, I can tell you, I think the number is actually bigger in our case, and we were really good at what we were doing. We were winners. So we did a lot of that learning. I hired the first person I ran into. I did a very good search. And he was cheap, and he was local, and he knew he was an expert on lean. He knew more than I did, but he gave us a good start, and we went and we did a variety of different things. We did some value stream mapping. We did a variety of projects, and over a couple of years, we engaged probably 10% of our workforce in a variety of different projects. But what I did during that period of time was I focused on sort of creating the demand for this in our organization. So if you have a problem, it's easy to get people excited about it. If everybody thinks you're doing okay, it's a little hard to get them excited. So every time people would do a presentation, every time we would have a report out on something, I would at the very end, the last thing I would do is I'd say, now listen, I've got 10 people here sitting in this room. I want you to tell me the truth. I'm only doing this because I think you might like it, you might appreciate it. Did you enjoy this? Would you do it again, and would you recommend it to somebody else? And I was stunned, because to a person, one group after another, people said, I can't believe somebody finally asked me my opinion. I can't believe I finally had a chance to do something in my workspace. And I was stunned. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I thought I might get begrudging openness to it. But what I got was enthusiastic endorsement and people telling me, please do more. Please engage our organization. And what we wanted, though, was a Turkey Hill approach, and so I was taking a little bit of time because I realized, went to the Toyota plant and looked at what they did, and they've got a $28,000 piece of equipment coming off their line every 55 seconds, and I've got about $79 worth of iced tea coming off my line. And I said, we're going to have to look at this a little differently than they do. And so we were taking probably a little bit longer because we had some time, and we were taking a little bit longer because we realized there weren't a lot of people in our business that were doing exactly what we could do. And so we eventually got to the place where we said we're really ready to dive into this deep, and I'd say that was probably 2 to 3 years into our journey, and we started looking around, took the search a little more seriously this time, ended up contracting with DBIRC, and began to put together our strategy for what we were going to do. Lean Steering Committee was formed, consisting of operations and financial management people. And I would just share that sort of starting from the training and experimentation and teaching model, we've now sort of broadened that and said we've basically got 3 core strategies for Lean in our organization. The first one is Lean training, large groups of employees. Basically, our goal is to have everybody fully trained. We have 700 people, 3 shifts, 3 different operations, really, so it's not one thing. And we can't just shut down. I like to tell people that the cows don't stop giving milk just because you want to have a meeting, okay? So we're bottling and we can't just stop. And so it's been an interesting challenge for us, but we're training everybody, and we're rolling out lean production methods that we think fit us: stand-up meetings, visual display boards, CI boards, value stream mapping, 5S, root cause analysis, teams, training, and Hoshin planning. We kind of identified the pieces we were going to do. And then, if you haven't read it, I'd strongly encourage you to read it. David Mann's book, Creating a Lean Culture. It's an excellent book, and we've taken a look at that and said, alongside of the lean production methods, we want to attach lean management strategies. And this took us 4 years to get to this idea, so we're a little slow on the uptake. But we got there, and so in addition to rolling this out, we're now looking at our management team themselves. I have about, out of 700 workforce, about 50 people that would be in management of one kind or another, and getting them to change their behavior is a whole different animal. Our hourly workforce was thrilled to death. Our management team was in spots somewhat less than interested, okay? So we're working at that pretty hard right at the moment. And it's going well, I'm pleased to say. So what are the results? This is a tough one, because some of what we've done, in my case, has really been focused on the culture change. We were really wanting to take a company that valued crisis management and get them to value teamwork. We really, I tried to define it in several different ways. But it's not like we haven't had some significant results along the way. It just wasn't my priority to define our success totally by that. But capital investments, I talked about that as a problem. We've reduced our annual capital investment by 40%, and we're not hurting our growth. Okay, it's just that instead of using capital to fix things, we're really now using lean to drive out waste and to get more out of what we have. I'm saying that typically, on average, and keep in mind, we have production lines that the products are growing 20 to 30% on them. So you can picture that about every 3, 4, 5 years, I'm doubling what I'm making on that line. If you're anywhere close to capacity when you start at that, it isn't long until you're in trouble. I'm generally telling people that on average, I'm making additions to manufacturing equipment 2 years later than I would have previously, or I'm getting close to 40% more out of a line than I would have previously got in the past, if that makes any sense. I'd be glad to talk with you about it sometime. And it is equipment reliability, but it's also people taking a look at the processes and driving out waste. Operating efficiency, we've definitely increased that tremendously. We're making basically on the same fluid production lines right now twice as much as we were 5 years ago. We haven't actually increased. Another way to frame that is, in 2009, we would have said we're at full capacity in our fluid production plant. 3 of those lines, the sales grew in excess of 20%, one of them at 30%, and I didn't add any production capacity. We just went back and figured out how to get more through those lines. We've documented over $1 million worth of savings, and frankly, that's what we've documented. I think that it's much bigger than that. So, lessons learned. this was an interesting one for me to try to frame up for you. I think probably one of the biggest lessons learned, I was very afraid of how people would react. I know my management team was very afraid of how people would react. I loosely described it as this, you got incompetent people out there, and if you put them in charge, we're going to have chaos. And the nice thing about Lean is it gives you a framework for dealing with that, if you will, and the training and equipping people to self-manage, and then being willing to take that step of faith. It's amazing to me how well people have responded to it and how well they do. Talk about teaching people how to use the appropriate tools. A brief story for you. I remember, and I was able to apply this later when I was thinking about Lean, when my oldest son was old enough that I could begin to discipline him in unique ways. He spilled Cheerios all over the floor, and I gave him a broom and said, clean them up, okay? And I remember walking out and coming back into the room, and he was kind of shoving them around with the broom. And my first reaction was one of agitation. Because I said, well, he's not taking this serious, you know what I mean? And I remember just having this sort of blinding realization. I looked at him and I said, you don't know how to use a broom, do you? And I didn't want to really admit that he didn't know how to use a broom, and he was just, whatever, and kids are kids, it wasn't serious to him anyway. And I said, here, let me show you. And I actually took the broom and I sort of bent the bristles a little bit, and I was demonstrating how to use a broom, And I think sometimes we assume that people know how to do all kinds of things. Everybody knows how to problem solve, or everybody knows how to work on a team, or everybody knows how to do these things. And one of the things that, in terms of lessons learned, one of the things we said is, I don't think you can teach and practice enough, especially in the early going. You're kidding yourself if you think you can just read a book and then get it and everybody's going to be okay. Another one is dribbling a basketball. The first time you ever tried to dribble a basketball, dropped it. If you were lucky, you might have hit it the first time. You probably whiffed at it. If you did, it sort of petered out a couple times. Eventually, you learn how to stand there and dribble it. Then you learn how to run with it. Then they say, well, you need to know how to do it with both hands. Then you can you know what I mean? But boy, that takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. So a lesson learned for me was this. This is a long-term journey, and you're not going to teach people once. Another lesson is I think that the pressure to be enamored by the tools, and sometimes our business case requires it. So I don't want to downplay this, but the pressure to be focused on the tools and to report success in dollars and productivity is really important, is really enormous. But people do things for their own reasons. And when they see how Lean helps them, it takes on a life of its own. And so I think that recognizing that people have a variety of motivations and being able to understand how it fits them and be able to talk to them in their terms, I think helps an awful lot. In another lesson learned in our culture, we've always believed people make a difference, but in our old management structure, we really didn't allow people to be involved, and so I think when we turned our focus on the human element, it really turned our Lean program around, and that's why I read the Gary Convis quote to you. So our next steps, well, we're going to continue to follow our strategic plan. I'm doing the standard work for Lean management. I basically have said, okay, our management team really has to join in this. The executive team itself said, hey, we need to figure out how to demonstrate ourselves, so we're going through Hoshin planning training. We've been doing strategic planning for 20 years. I think we're pretty good at it. But I had to stop and say, could we improve? Yes. Would continuous improvement apply to what we do as management? Yes. We need to demonstrate to our associates by the way that we're willing to be open to teaching and instruction as well. So we're going through Hoshin planning. We're expanding the number of Lean champions to support that, and we're working towards linking Lean competency as a prerequisite for promotion in our organization. And that's going to be a fairly big step, because in our organization, you got promoted by staying there a long time and becoming a technical expert in some area, and shifting to, well, those things may still be important, but you're going to have to demonstrate Lean competency as well in order to move on up to your next step. And that's another next step for us in terms of what we're doing. So that's a hurried up version of 5 years of Lean journey.